Hello, Patreon and YouTube. This is Nathan P. Butler, and this is a project update for the month of August 2018. Now, fair warning, there's basically three things all playing into the way that this month has worked since the last update on July 26th. So, not a lot has come out within the last month or so, although one of them is a particularly important release. One factor is the fact that we're at the beginning of a new school year. For the online classes that I teach, which is my full-time position, there's a lot of things like meetings and phone calls with students to sort of introduce yourself and get them into the courses and answer their questions and that sort of thing. And when you have almost 200 students, that winds up being a lot of phone calls that take up a lot of time, even when they're scheduled in advance. So a lot of my time this last month has been taken up in many cases with dealing with things like that as we're beginning the school year. On top of that, of course, our baby is due on September 8th, which means we're kind of at the home stretch right now. She was at full term at 37 weeks, which is the official, full term mark. So now it's kind of an any day now sort of thing. So lots of doctor visits and things like that. And then, of course, the Star Wars Timeline Gold was wrapping up with its final edition. So basically any free time that I had just about to work on projects or to work on things that are kind of my side hobbies and that sort of thing tended to be spent on getting the timeline ready to launch. But now it finally has, so things have opened up to get a lot more time to actually get into other things as I record. So just kind of saying that up front, kind of know what to expect from this month. One thing that you should expect if you're a Patreon supporter, of course, is seeing your name in the credits of these update videos and on the thank you page that'll be specific for Patreon supporters in the next edition of my book, A Saga on Home Video. I'm also trying, of course, since we're at a point with a manageable number of Patreon supporters, to mention and thank you here verbally, actually, on the show, rather than just in the credits there. So, first, I want to thank the Travelers Through the Butlerniverse. That's that $1 tier. That's basically a chance to get yourself thanks here and in the book. So thank you very much to S.W. Chris, Jeremiah Mustard, Martin Dahl, Austin Pierce, Thomas Myers, and Ben P. Stein. Then we have the Denizens of the Butlerniverse level. That's that level that's $5 and up. $5, of course, on Patreon will get you access to those exclusive commentaries that I put out, at least 2 a month. Right now, primarily focusing on episodes of the Clone Wars. So thank you all to the Denizens of the Butlerniverse: Jason Hunt, Bobby Craig, Robert Medina, Chris Morgan, Sam Howard, Stephen M., Joey Zitzman, Jeff Ellis, and Jared Rasher. And then finally, we have the top tier on Patreon. That is the Nobility of the Butlerniverse, that $10 and up tier. And I want to give a big thanks to those folks who have access to that exclusive Q&A video each month. The Nobility right now include Aaron Melzak, Andrew Bettis, Benjamin Handelman, Gary Sherwood, David Ray, and Brian Snook. If you are in that top tier, by the way, don't forget to put your questions into the question collection thread for the next Q&A video. I'll be recording that probably right around the time that Cade is due, so first week or so of September, which gives you about a week to 2 weeks at this point to make sure your questions get on there so they can get answered this month. Speaking of Patreon, the newest releases of those commentaries include the 22nd Clone Wars commentary, that is for the episode Mystery of a Thousand Moons, and the 23rd, which is Storm over Ryloth. So, of course, the next two that'll be coming up here on the 1st of September and the 15th of September will be the other parts of that Ryloth trilogy. We also, on August 6th, had the release of the 8th of those Nobility of the Butlerniverse exclusive Q&A videos through Patreon, where we looked primarily at the tactics and approaches taken by the Bring Back the Clone Wars side of Star Wars fandom and the Bring Back Legends side of Star Wars fandom, and just the general concept of the Clone Wars coming back. For podcasts, it was basically a slow month. We had no new episodes of either Star Wars Beyond the Films or Cloud City Casino released since July 26th when we had our last update video. However, we did just record a new episode, episode 84 of Cloud City Casino, that'll be released soon, and that was me and Michael Morris discussing the classic Star Wars video game Masters of Terras Kasi, which is somewhat appropriate given the fact that Terras Kasi got itself a mention in Solo: A Star Wars Story. The biggest new release for me, of course, for this last month has been the final edition of the Star Wars Timeline Gold, or the Star Wars Timeline Project, which I'd basically been doing in a public way since version 1.0 back in mid to late 1997, though I had worked on it myself for my own usage for about a year plus before that. The last edition is the Star Wars Timeline Gold number 56, which you can find now on StarWarsFanWorks.com/timeline. It was released on August 11th at a grand total of 3,392 pages, which is 153 added pages since the previous edition. We have the Story Group Canon document that looks at the new or current Star Wars continuity, which runs 704 pages. The Legends continuity then is divided into 3 files, one for Before A New Hope, one for A New Hope and Onward, and one that is a Clone Wars supplement that looks at the Clone Wars in 2 different ways, the original pre-2008 way and the 2008 and later way for Legends. Those files are Volume 1 was 1,018 pages, Volume 2 927 pages, and the Clone Wars supplement 266. And then we have the Appendices file with a little bit of everything, including a publishing timeline as opposed to an in-universe timeline, which is 477 pages this time around. So, for those who like Star Wars chronology references, the Star Wars Timeline Gold does indeed have its final release out now, but bear in mind, it is indeed the final release. The project will not be updated beyond this point. It should stay online for the foreseeable future. I expect the Timeline's Facebook page to stay online in some form or another for the foreseeable future, although I may create a separate little private group to specifically talk about continuity issues with those that I know will be civil about it. But as far as the project itself, it is wrapped up now, just a couple of months shy of what would have been its 21st anniversary. So 20 years of my life, more than half my life spent on that project, and it is finally done. The weight that is lifted off my shoulders from that is immense. It's allowed me to do other things. And honestly, it's kind of weird now being able to read Star Wars comics, to watch the trailer for the upcoming Star Wars Resistance and that sort of thing, and not immediately have this need to go in and summarize it or to update the timeline on it. I can just enjoy them as a consumer and then talk about them on podcasts or in reviews and such, rather than it always being about, oh, here's another thing to summarize, oh, here's a note that I need to make about this chronological reference here and that sort of thing. So it is already paying dividends, in essence, to have stepped away from the timeline and allow myself to focus on other things. August was huge for timeline focus, but it's out now, as of August 11th. And then, of course, we have the YouTube channel, youtube.com/chronoradio, and lots of new things released there, not nearly as much as in some cases, but I got a chance, once this timeline was done, to finally work on From the Star Wars Home Video Library and take some of the stuff that's been piled over here and get through it, although I still have a bit more to do. So, in the last month, what have we seen on the YouTube channel? Well, we had some Let's Plays. We had a Let's Play for The Persistence for PlayStation VR. We also had another Let's Play for PlayStation VR of the game Detached, which was actually because I had a code, a review code, sent to me by the publicity company, I guess, or the publicity arm of the company that made it. And it turned out to be pretty fun, although it was something that I probably wouldn't have picked up if I hadn't gotten a review code because of all the warnings about motion sickness. And it turns out, didn't really bother me for that one all that much. So, Let's Plays for The Persistence and Detached. Then we had episodes of Nate's favorite deck building games, where we took a look at the New Gods crossover pack for the DC deck building game, the Teen Titans Go deck building game, which ties into the DC deck building game, and the World War Hulk expansion for Marvel Legendary. We had an announcement video on August 11th to go with the Star Wars Timeline Gold's final release actually hitting the internet, and then the rest of what we saw on the YouTube channel this last month or so has been for From the Star Wars Home Video Library. We took a look at the Rebels Season 4 Blu-ray and DVD releases, the UK Heroes and Villains DVDs from 2005, the Finnish version of Attack of the Clones on VHS, the screener for Battle for Endor on VHS from 1990, a subtitled THX remastered edition of the original trilogy from 1995 in the US that was subtitled in Spanish, Volume 2 of the UK Droids VHS releases, and several Japanese prequel trilogy VHS releases. So, quite a few episodes there. I want to say 7 episodes from the Star Wars Home Video Library, finally, as that series is getting back going now that the Star Wars Timeline Gold has been wrapped up. So, by and large, not necessarily a hugely impactful and productive month. I have taken more color pictures to insert into the current working copy of the second edition of a saga on home video. That is still a while away. Right now, I'm just slowly taking pictures as I get time. But you should expect to see a bit more frequent releases here on the channel and elsewhere, thanks to the fact that now at least the timeline is not my primary focus. Of course, my son will soon be my primary focus, so we'll see how things change then. But at least for the moment, the timeline being out of the way is one of the things that is going to allow these other projects to flourish a bit more, both before and after my son is born. So, with that, we'll wrap up this update. Again, thank you all for your support. May the Force be with you. And if I don't speak to you before then, have a great holiday here in about a week in the U.S., the Labor Day weekend.